Hey everyone, welcome to Live Out Loud. I'm your host, Raylan Sandin, and today I am joined by my new friend, Jamal Maxsam. Jamal is a business success strategist that helps leaders lead their organizations like a champion. He's known for his ability to plan strategically, helps leaders create action steps to accomplish their vision, develop other leaders, and develop their teams. He helps leaders increase the impact of their organizations through the development of people and processes. Jamal obtained his first leadership role at the age of 16, managing a fast food restaurant, leading his peers as well as adults. We'll have to get into that, my friend. Yeah, his success continued as he opened a new location for the franchise and was recruiting team and training team members, and resulted in several awards for sales and performance. Jamal then shifted to education and continued to grow in his ability to develop people. He taught for 9 years and then served as a school principal. He has led a school with as many as 92 staff members, wow, serving approximately 950 families and providing support as a school principal to a school that served approximately 2,100 families. In addition to running his business, Jamal serves on the board of directors for a nonprofit organization. He lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you guys, this is the best part, with his wife, where they enjoy laughing and spending time together. Jamal, my friend, thank you for joining me. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah, it's been amazing connecting with you and hearing your story. I would love if you are open to sharing. Well, first of all, I want to say, gosh, you're making me tired just by reading all of that. When do you sleep?
Man.
Oh, but I would love to hear about your early experiences. What brought you, what shaped you into the leader you are today?
Wow. It just kind of started, my first leadership experience was, I managed a Burger King at 16. And the funny thing is, I only went to work there because my friends were working there. I was in class and heard them talking about things that were happening at work, and it sounded fun. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go work there too. Because prior to that, I was a caddy, and I had my own entrepreneurship thing going. I would caddy for a golf course, then cut grass. And so between that, I was making some decent money.
Yeah.
And so I went to Burger King because of my friends, and just kind of learned, the things they teach you there, and just excelled. And they put me in a management program and began to develop me as a manager. I've always liked talking to people. I always liked speaking to people. I remember 7 years old giving a speech, and people, smiling and laughing and, things like that. And so I always liked communicating and just really motivating people. So just kind of to use that gift and that desire, and started focusing on leading. And Burger King did well by sending me through a training program, and I'm process oriented, so they tapped into that. So it was I don't want to say easy, but it was a good fit at that time. It was very interesting though. My friends eventually left Burger King, but I stayed. And it was interesting directing people who you would see in school, and, were your friends, and then, but also directing adults.
Right.
And dealing with, and dealing with customers, customer complaints. And they say, I want to see the manager. So I come out with my shirt and tie, like, can I help you?
And they're like, are you the manager? Yes.
So it was an interesting dynamic, and it was interesting to earn the respect of those adults. During that time, they followed me because of my personality. because I'm super friendly to everybody,
Yeah.
and because I was skilled. So it was
Yeah.
more of personality along with skill, which caused them to really cooperate,
What
which
skills,
was
what skills would you say that really lended you toward, I guess, enabling you to win over and earn the respect of those who were older than you? Because my dad found that as well when he became he worked in a taxidermist firm when he moved to Colorado. He was 20, and he quickly became the foreman. And there were men that he led that were, had 30 years in the business. And here's this upstart. And, initially, some of the response was, I think several of them quit because he
mhm.
was, their boss. So what was that like for you? What, I guess, what skills did you already innately have, but also what skills maybe you were taught through your managerial training and all of that that really helped you bridge that age gap?
Yeah, and it's interesting you would ask that because as you were asking the question, I immediately thought about, people who are young and, they get looked upon as not knowing anything because, be like, oh, you don't know anything, you just got here, or you too young, you don't have enough life experience. For me, it was the fact that I was speaking or, as a child. And so that helped me to be a good communicator. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and so I had that business mindset from being around them, learned to communicate from speaking, and so I could articulate myself
Yeah,
and I could speak intelligently. But then it was them seeing the evidence of my work.
right.
I'm a student at heart, and so whatever they taught me to do as far as the processes of the business, I
Mm.
made sure I learned it and implemented it to the best of my ability. So they saw me putting that effort in. They saw me applying what I learned and being consistent with it. It wasn't like I would try to, skirt around policy when the head manager wasn't around. It was, this is what we have to do. They saw me following it. They saw me leading by example,
Yeah,
but always having that posture of learning. And I never, at that time, I didn't think anything about it because I never let being a manager, because at that franchise we had to wear the blue shirt, the
yeah,
tie. So I never let the blue shirt change who I was
yeah.
or get to me because to be honest, I didn't even think about it. I just realized I had more responsibility and I tried to do that to the best of my ability.
Love that.
So I think that was part of it because I didn't try to assert myself to be something I wasn't, or like, hey, I'm the big guy now and you have to listen to me. I didn't try to do that. It was always that I won't say casual approach, but it was always a connected approach. And they
Mm.
just responded because I tried to always connect, always showed the same respect for them when I became the manager as I did before I became the manager.
Yeah,
So the same people who taught me how to make a sandwich when I first started, the
right.
respect I showed them
Yeah,
was the same respect I gave them when I was giving them direction.
yeah.
So it was just, so they just responded to me well. I can't say that I had any challenges there. And I think it was partially because of those skills. And of course, I always tried to be better and do better.
I love that. I love that you talk about it's not, and life is like this, right? It's not just about the book learning. It's not just about the, immersing yourself in, okay. And I worked at Burger King too for a time when I was pregnant. And so I did all sorts of jobs,
Mhm.
all over the place. It's not, you stick the buns in, right? And then you get the, You get the meat patties in, right? And then once
Mhm.
the buns come out, here they come, and then you've got the mayonnaise, and it's a whole process. You have the
Yes.
planogram of this and this and this and this, and then you wrap it just right. And so it's not just
Yes.
all about that learning, right? But it's also the emotional intelligence that you spoke of.
Yeah.
Where did you learn that from? Was that something that you had exemplified in your home, and can you talk about that?
I would say I learned it later on, but for that scenario, it wasn't, I don't know where I got it from, to be honest. I just knew I cared for people.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I just had this heart for people, which
Yeah.
was why, at a young age, I was speaking and I was doing music. So I always wanted to inspire people. And
Okay.
so it was just that heart that had always been there. I mean, my mother, she was very emotionally intelligent and things like that, but
Mhm.
she was extremely busy. So it wasn't like
Yep.
she sat down and taught me how to be nice to people. Of
Right.
course, she taught me to be respectful because
Mhm.
my family was very strict on that. They were, you
Mhm.
respect people and you treat them a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you have any issues, you come tell us kind of
Right.
situation.
Right.
So I learned the basics of respect and how to talk to people. And, of course, like I said before, how to be articulate. But I think it was just my heart in general
Yeah.
because I just had that thing for inspiring and helping. And
Mhm.
it was just, that was my key driver,
Yeah.
as I was there.
Yeah. Having that empathetic nature, that nature of I think I think because you and I, we've talked about this, offline together, but I think that ability to observe and watch other people, right? And really, you said earlier, you built a relationship of connectedness, and
Hmm.
that was your leadership style.
Yeah,
And I think that in that realm, that is really how great leaders operate, is that they recognize that it's through connection. It's through
yeah,
my husband is former military, and he says all the time, he himself, as a sergeant, he led from the front. So like you said, there wasn't any job or any um, action that he was telling his soldiers to perform that he himself had not performed or wasn't still performing. So
absolutely.
yeah, I think that that's huge. And um, talk a little bit about that inspiration that kind of led you into teaching then, and how that followed you through your teaching and into your leadership role then again as a principal. I mean,
Absolutely.
working with 2,100 families and 92 staff members, that's big.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh, it was a lot. um,
yeah.
yeah, it was just, I've always had in me the desire to help people.
Mhm.
And so, as I explained, and I demonstrated that, when I worked at Burger King. And so so really my story kind of took some detours because I knew I was supposed to own my own business, came from an entrepreneurship type of family. So I went to business school. And when I left, got my degree and got a job and didn't like it. It was too stale, too cold. It was just so, I believe in structure, but it was so cold feeling. Structure doesn't, structure is good, but there has to be a sense of warmth. And
Yeah,
like you were saying, connectedness.
yeah.
And so when you have structure without the connectedness, it feels cold and stale. And so where I worked, felt very cold and very stale. I connected a little bit here and there with the people on my team, and I formed some friendships there. But for the most part, it was very, very cold. And I just really felt like I wasn't living up to my potential of inspiring people to live up to their potential. And so I thought that law enforcement was the way to do that. So I left that.
Did not tell me this.
Went
We
into
share this in common too, my friend.
yes,
Oh,
went
God.
into law enforcement and did the thing, connected with the people who went to the academy with me. I was a very good student to learn everything I'm supposed to do because I wanted to get out there, treat people right, make a difference in my community.
Yeah.
And and it's funny because I was with people who all their lives dreamed of being, in law enforcement. So they would ask me, what made you want to be in law enforcement? How long did you want to be a police officer?
You're like,
and I just said, I just had the desire like a year ago. I mean,
right?
and people were all their lives dreaming of it, but for me, it wasn't the position, it was what I would be able to do through the position. My dream wasn't to be a police officer because I wanted to wear a badge and carry a gun and, get in car chases. Now, I will say, it's a side note, it was fun. We got into a car chase every week. That was kind of fun. It was a lot of adrenaline. But my desire was always to make an impact. So it wasn't the job, it was the results of that job. It's like, am I out here every day helping people? I really didn't like arresting people, so that was part of the reason why I transitioned out of there, because I think everybody saw I didn't like arresting people. I was too busy telling them how to not make the same mistake. Because we were arresting a lot of minors, unfortunately, and I'm like, dude, you in high school, what are you out here doing? And so I'm trying to talk sense into them, and I'm like, look, you need to be getting yourself together. And and I had people, and it was funny, I had people thanking me, for talking to them and taking that time to talk to them. And and for me, because I always believe in treating people with respect, which is kind of in light of everything that's going on right now. When people complied, I was cool. I didn't use any unnecessary. I didn't have to, grab people a certain way or anything like that. Because if I say, give me your hands, they did. It's like, okay, let's walk. And I always tried to preserve the dignity of people. We had an incident where a young lady had got into an altercation at a nightclub, and her shirt was torn and her chest was out, and I covered her.
Good.
I took a piece of clothing and covered her so she wouldn't be exposed. Where other folks was like, just put her in the back car, let's go. It was like, well, let's preserve the dignity of the person we're arresting. Just because they made a mistake does not mean that mistake has to define them.
Thank you.
Or have to scar them.
So, thank you.
So that's kind of how I operated, and I found that that wasn't a good fit for that particular way of policing. They wanted people who were super aggressive and super intimidating and super everything else that I won't say. But it's like, I didn't do that. I never tried to intimidate people. I always came at the heart. It's like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? Come on. And when I had to be aggressive, of course, there were times you had to be aggressive and you had to, use a degree of force in order to make an arrest. I did that, but I made sure I was always conscious to not go overboard, to not hurt people, and even after the fact, to preserve their dignity as an individual. So so
important.
I didn't fit there. So I was only there for like a year, after the academy, because it didn't fit.
And see, if I could, we need more, sticking on that point, we need more officers who are very much like that. I know there are some agencies that are geared more toward community policing efforts and building relationships. But especially, in light of everything that's going on in our current world right now, we obviously need more of that. And I know that's why a lot of people are talking about diverting funds from policing to those other programs that do that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that and grateful for it. I also spent time in law enforcement. I was a
Okay.
dispatcher. Yep, I was a dispatcher, and I also was a victim advocate, and so I saw both
Yes.
sides a lot, and still have a lot of friends in that community in law enforcement. And what I see today um, has really shifted my own lens in that
Yeah.
regard too. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Important.
it was a trying time because I realized I didn't fit, but like you said, I felt like the whole system needed to change because
Yeah,
there were good people with good hearts in
yeah,
the department with me serving.
yeah.
And but unfortunately there you get like anywhere, there was a mix of people with a good heart for the right thing.
Right,
Then you had people who were, I felt, I in my opinion, were immature. They
right,
weren't ready to be police officers
right.
because that type of position is a leadership position.
Yeah.
And they were too immature for the responsibility, and what they did, there was one officer who unfortunately got let go because he went to the club and he's flashing his firearm. I'm like, what are you doing? That's so
Oh
immature.
no.
It's
Yeah.
like, stop it.
Right.
So it was, you had that,
Yeah.
but then you had some who were policing by fear. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't recognize is that in the academy, they teach you not to let your guard down because they say at any moment something can go sideways.
Right.
And you have to be able to make sure you're prepared
Right.
so that you can get out alive. They
Right.
tell you that there is no such thing as a routine traffic stop, which I get because you never know what can happen when, because it's a dangerous job.
Right.
But the problem with that is if a person's soul is fed fear
Mm.
instead of being fed wisdom,
Yeah.
instead of being fed wisdom where things could jump off this way or this way, this way, so be alert, be prepared,
Sure.
it is taught in a fear-based way.
Yeah.
And so, and not trying to get too deep, but when you keep consuming something, it becomes a part of your soul, and then you subconsciously act out of that thing. And
Yeah.
so every day they're showing traffic stops where officers were where that went bad and officers were murdered and lost their lives. They didn't show us the videos of the ones that went well. So
Right.
imagine every single day, and the police academy is for a year-long program.
Right.
So every day during instruction, you're seeing these multiple videos of people dying, hearing the audio of officers dying. It was almost like inflicting trauma
Yes.
on the people who will have to go out in the street.
Very
And
much.
now,
It actually is
yeah,
very
yeah,
much very indoctrinating. Yeah.
exactly. So now they're out trying to protect and serve
Right.
people of the community that they had to live in because where I lived, you had to be a resident of the city in order to be a police officer.
Right.
And so now they have to protect and serve these people from this place of trauma and fear,
Yeah.
which cause an overexertion
Yeah.
of force
Yeah.
because their mind is anything can happen. I'm going home tonight. It's
Right.
so and so that's why I say the system has to change, but not just the system and how they do things, but the system and how police officers are trained,
Yeah.
because they have to be taught wisdom and caution. And it can't be from a place of fear. We know it's dangerous,
Yeah.
but that fear-based teaching
Yeah.
only promotes the issues that we have now, and
Amen.
it keeps them from really being authentic and genuinely connecting with, they talk about community policing,
Yeah.
police officers in schools and all these kind of things, but it keeps them from being able to genuinely connect with the people around them
Right.
because one, you're taught not to let your guard down, but
Right.
but they're doing it from a place of fear. So it's like, okay, I can't be authentic with you and show you I'm a person because I don't know if you're going to try to, subdue me and take my weapon.
Right.
So I gotta, instead of just being observant and watching, like they teach you never to sit with your back to the door or
Yep.
stuff like that, instead
Yep.
of just, it comes from a different place. And
Right.
so when people have that guardedness on their heart,
Mm-hmm.
it not, and they think they're protecting themselves, but it's actually blocking them from connecting. And so that's why that whole thing has to shift and change. You know, they have to really change how they train police officers, and they have to teach police officers how to be careful, observant, and safe while still having a place of connectiveness to the people they're serving, because they have to have a servant's heart, not a law enforcement. I don't know why we're on this, but it's still good.
You know what? I'm here for it. I am absolutely here for it. Thank you. I think that this is probably the reason why we're here today.
Yeah, because law enforcement perspective has to go from the thought of I'm enforcing the law and boom, it has to be more service focused. Yeah. That when they roll up, they have to think I'm here to serve, which means I have to help people recognize what the law is and what it isn't. And if somebody broke the law and I have to take them with me, I have to do that, but knowing that they have the opportunity to share their side of the story. And if they were wrong, they get the consequence and move on. If they were right, they get the dismissal and move on. My job isn't to think, unless I'm a detective, I just find evidence. But I can't make assumptions when I'm there, and I can't just come in as just strict enforcer.
Yes.
You know, my job is to serve if I'm in law enforcement.
Yes.
And so I think there has to be that shift in mindset of service, because they maintain order and things like that. That's a part of their responsibility. But it has to be from a place and a heart of service. Not saying they have to be soft and weak and, because, criminal elements are tough and hard and heartless, but you don't have to be heartless to deal with somebody who's heartless. That's like trying to hate someone who hates you. It doesn't work that way. If someone hates you, that's their issue. You have to still keep your heart in a good place, which will help you think clearer as you're responding to the person who's dealing with hate. So I think that's part of that situation. But because it wasn't like that, I didn't fit. And so my next thing was, where can I go that'll help me express this in a way that fits? And so education was that place. It was like, I can help people be proactive and teach them how to think to avoid situations that I was folks in. And that was really what got me into education. And then when I got there, I was finding myself teaching more than content. I'm teaching this content, but I didn't see it as I'm teaching you this so you can get an A on your report card.
Right.
I would shock my classes when I would tell them I could care less about grades. And they would be like, what? You're the teacher. You don't care about grades? And I would tell them, no. My main concern was, can they perform the skill that I'm teaching?
Right.
The grade will take care of itself.
Right.
I mean, if I give you an A, but you can't perform the skill, that A means nothing.
Right.
So if you can perform the skill, then that's all I care about, because I'm teaching you a life skill. So that's going to be built upon in the next grade, which then is going to, by the time you're done with your school career and ready to enter into college, you should have a thorough knowledge of certain stuff.
Yeah.
So that's all I cared about. And I found myself really focusing on that and really trying to make an impact with the students I serve. And then it was like, after a certain point, something in me was like, more, we need more. And so I went into administration, and, which was kind of weird, because I went into administration into the charter world. And after getting hired, the school closed and I had to go back into teaching. And I was like, what was going on here? And then, but see, even that had the potential to possibly scare a person, because I had to make a choice when an opportunity came again. I could stay comfortable in my teaching position, because my previous experience was I got hired and then to be a principal of a school that never opened, and then which pushed me back. Or I could take this leap of faith to be into another principal position, knowing that when I left the school this time, they would not allow me to come back, which I understand. They were like, we can't let you yo-yo, you can't We can't keep a position open for you. So if you take this opportunity, you know, we're going to wish you well.
Right.
So it was one of those steps of faith and one of those defining moments of I could choose this or I could choose that. One choice would be okay and good, but the next choice would be the better thing and lead me more towards fulfilling my purpose and that innate desire to inspire and help people.
Wow.
So I chose to take the leap, which I did, and it wasn't perfect when I leaped out because the charter world in Ohio is so volatile. I get into this school and they tell me we need to build our student number, our enrollment. Otherwise we can't operate. And I'm like, wait, I wish you would have told me that before I accepted the position.
Right.
You know, because I knew there was no going back to the school I left. I had trained my replacement.
Right.
So I said, okay, we're going to dig in. Doubled the school's enrollment. I created an entire budget because that school was mismanaged. I created a budget to get that school out of debt and still function and serve students within a 1 month time. And so by the grace of God, I was able to do that. And so, but then that board still voted to close the school. They said, what you did was impressive. We like your plan. We like this. Yes, you doubled the enrollment, but we just don't want to take the chance. So imagine getting your insurance benefits 1 week in the mail, then the next week saying, you know, you don't qualify, your benefits are gone.
Yeah.
So I'm out there in this place of faith, in this place of now it's like, okay, the school is closing, but my heart was to do the right thing. So I'm sending letters to all these kids and families that I just enrolled. And I recommended 3 different schools for them to go to in the area. I personally researched those schools, looked at their practices and said, okay, these schools would do for you what I was going to do for you.
Wow.
Here you go. Out of that, I recommended one particular school and then didn't know till later after I got hired that I recommended a school that I ended up getting hired for later. I recommended the school, then later on saw a posting for a position. I applied for it, got hired. And when they told me the name of the school I would be placed at, it was one of those 3. I was like, wow, this is cool.
Look at that.
Look at the way this fell in.
Yeah.
So now, boom, I'm leading this school. And that school serves about 250 families. You know, it wasn't really large, but it wasn't like super small either. You know, I had a small staff and I learned a lot of leadership lessons there, you know, because I try to connect, I'm relational, and I've been studying leadership all this time, reading books, listening to podcasts, applying what I'm learning because I want to be better. And so I'm doing all that. And this is my first taste of some of the things I put out at the time when, you know, you recognize that somebody leading you is not a good coach. It was like I expected certain development, but didn't get it. That person said they could develop me and help me grow. They had the desire. They even had the skill set, but they didn't know how to develop other leaders. This particular person was skilled in education, had long track record of success, but didn't know how to train other people to get those same results. Part of it was that person didn't know how to let go. They were trying to still do everything, trying to wear all the hats, trying to be the principal of every school when you can't do that. You're the superintendent. You have to lead the leaders. It's so that's when I really first learned the lesson of one, what it's like to try to lead when you have somebody who really wouldn't let you lead. You know, which is hard because you're trying to lead, but this person's not letting you lead. And then they're trying to grow you, but don't know how to grow you. It was a tense situation. And then you had systems in place that would really circumvent your leadership. So there was someone that I was leading, and I was in charge of, who was told not to allow me to change things that had been in place for years. It was like, oh, you know
Oh,
how I like it. Don't let him change this. You know what to do. So this
interesting.
person had the license to be uncooperative
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
told me, yeah, and told me, I don't really trust you. The last person came here, tried to change everything and mess everything up. My job is to preserve the legacy of this school. And so
Wow.
I don't trust you. I don't have to listen to you. I'm like,
Wow.
oh, okay. I'm like, okay.
And
So
this was a staff member beneath you and you were the principal?
yes,
Really?
yes. So a lot of leadership lessons that I learned, that I bring, came
Right.
from, part of it came from that experience. Cause it's like, what do you do
Right.
when when you're doing all the right things that they say
Right.
you should do as a leader,
Right.
but now you're not seeing the success because of these external dynamics have
Right.
created a culture of bypass,
Right.
where if somebody doesn't like you, what you say, they could bypass to go right to your leader
Right.
without you even, being able to defend your position or
Right.
explain yourself or anything.
Right.
So it was one of those, it was a very, very tense environment. And I would say for me, I questioned myself a lot as a leader. I
Yeah.
was like, man, how good am I? How effective am I? There were people who loved me, of
Right.
course, but there were also people who didn't like me. And then there were people who wanted to play the political game and suck up to my supervisor because they thought that was the way to get promoted. And so
Right.
like when the next school opened, that person to choose me. So
Right.
so it was that kind of environment. And I would say I got my mojo back as a leader when I left that school, because it was one of those situations where they pulled me into the office and sat me down and said, hey, we have a sister school that's struggling. We're going to let that principal go. We need you to go there and help turn that school around. And
Wow.
this is mid-year. I mean, stuff like that normally should happen at the beginning of the year.
Right.
This was like right before Christmas break. I'm like,
Wow.
what about this school?
Right.
and and my supervisor was kind of running it herself anyway, not really letting me lead.
Mhm.
So my supervisor was like, well, I'm just going to personally lead this school anyway. And I was like, okay. And
Wow.
drove me up, the next week to walk through the school, to see it, and to give my honest assessment. So I walked through, I watched them, I spent the day there, watched them, watched classrooms, watched their processes, asked questions,
Mhm.
took a bunch of notes, and gave my honest assessment. And my supervisor was like, yep, I knew you were the right person. And then,
Wow.
so they sent me there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that school was hungry for leadership. And so before I came, they decorated my office and had all kind of stuff, welcome, and banners and balloons. And
Yeah.
it just was like what I needed. I needed my soul to be fed.
Yeah.
And they helped me get my mojo back. They were
Yeah.
like the greatest group of teachers. The school was smaller, so it had unique problems in itself,
Yeah.
and people were doing what it took to take care of those families and serve those families. So I did that, and before that school year was up, it completely changed. I
That's
instituted
awesome.
some things and started recognizing teachers of the month, and had
Yeah.
student of the month, and put some very clear processes in place to help that environment.
Yeah.
And it was really good. It was a good experience. The people there were awesome. I was like, man, and it was exactly what I needed
Yeah.
to regain my lifeblood and my confidence as a leader, because I had felt so defeated, so beat
Right.
up in that other position. Even though there were teachers in other position, like I said before, that loved me, supported me, appreciated me,
Right.
but it was so hard because in that previous position, my supervisor had too much of a personal stake in that
Right.
school and
Right.
didn't allow me to lead. So it was so restricting. And then the person under me who was supposed to help lead and be
Right.
like one of the leaders in the building
Right.
was subordinate at the time. It just really wasn't. So it was constant stress and conflict. It would be simple things that you think as the principal I'm supposed to know, supposed to have a
Right.
right to, but I was treated like an outsider.
Right.
So it was a very defeating type of situation. But when I left,
It sounds to me like you were set up in that situation, set up to fail to begin with from the beginning. She had built a hedge because she had to give the appearance that she was okay with someone else leading. You were a figurehead, but she held all of the power, and the subordinate or the individual beneath you was subordinate only because that individual was fed by the power of your supervisor. And
mhm,
so you were boxed in, right?
yes,
And there was nowhere for you to go. So you weren't even
absolutely,
allowed to lead. Um,
absolutely,
and those situations are, and as you said, I mean, those situations are very demoralizing. You know, when you're given a job description and a leadership role, but then you have no power given to you or afforded to your position to back
mm,
that up. That becomes very defeating,
yes,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
So
It,
when you transferred then to your new position, um, was she still, well, you were then allowed freedom and you had your autonomy and you were able then to lead from the front and all of that, correct?
yeah, yes, because the school it was in a nearby city, so it was about 30 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was important to her, but she didn't have that personal investment in it because she didn't personally start that school. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was easier for her to give me the freedom that I needed.
I see.
And, and to be honest, my former boss, she was a good person. She has a good heart. But sometimes when someone is in leadership position
Mm-hmm.
and they have a certain area of weakness or an area that they need to
Right.
grow in,
Right.
if sometimes it affects everyone else.
Right.
And so I was just in that previous school, I was just in that spot that was very tender.
Yeah.
And there was an emotional attachment to it. And it
Yeah.
affected how she allowed me to lead.
Right.
Once I got out of that, then I was able to lead freer. I was able to be more effective as
Nice.
a leader in my own right. The school was able to be more effective,
Mm-hmm.
and it was totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was still my supervisor, and things went well, which I think part of that hurt her feelings because at the end of that year is when I transitioned out of that into public, because I felt like the way the charter environment um, is in Ohio, and especially was at that time, it was too unstable.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time marketing the school versus focusing on instruction.
Right.
And it was taking a toll on my family. And so I had to think, I want to help people, I want to inspire people to greatness. But at the same time, what good is that if my family life isn't great?
Yeah.
And I try to walk this fine balance because some people will say you're supposed to sacrifice everything for your call and for your purpose, and there is a degree of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people say, well, you don't do any sacrifice, you build up your family. And there's some truth to that too.
Mm-hmm.
I take the holistic balanced approach
Yes.
where I believe that you should not have to lose your family to fulfill purpose. And
Right.
I also believe you should not have to sacrifice purpose for the sake of family. I
Right.
believe that there's a balance. You
Yeah.
know, people say you can't have your cake and eat it too. But then I say, what's the point of having cake if you can't eat it? You
Right.
know, that's the whole point. And
Right.
so it's like,
Right.
I feel like there's a place of fulfilling purpose and having a good family life that we can all achieve. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it wasn't there at that school because it was taking a toll. Every weekend I was somewhere marketing in school. I kept a fold up table, the table tents, the banners, flyers, all of that stayed in my trunk from January through August because every weekend, sometimes 2 or 3 times in the weekend, I was off somewhere marketing in school. So I made the decision to get into the traditional public,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what put me in that position of the serving 950 students, 92 staff members. Because I slid in as somebody's assistant, and I was like, look, I'd be a great assistant. I'm like, I know what to do. I'll support your leadership.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And so kind of just slid in and, just began to connect with staff
Yeah.
and connect with families, try to be the best I could be, in every position, try to make the most impact, show people I care, you
Mm-hmm.
know, try to support them. What do you need? And I did all that my first year, and things were great. And people made comments to me like, oh, you saved our school, don't leave next year. You too good, you might leave, don't leave. And I was like, no, I'm going nowhere. Because
Right.
at that point, my intent was to stay at that school while I continued to do leadership development on the side, and
Yeah.
then eventually slide into leadership development full time.
Right.
So
Right.
I had no intention of leaving that district really anytime soon. And so the next year, I developed a good relationship with the principal and really everybody in the district. And that next year, the principal relocated, moved out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And I was recommended to be the principal. And, and I was appointed to the position. And so, and this is why I learned the concept that I teach about an artificial culture. It was like, it was like the minute I became the principal, the people who worked closely with me as the assistant, it
Mm-hmm.
was like they didn't know me. It was like they treated me like I was a stranger in the sense of they questioned my motivation, they questioned decisions. It was like, really? So we just spent the whole year working closely together.
Right.
And then now, because I have a greater degree of responsibility,
Right.
and I didn't, I keep the same perspective like I did when I was at Burger King.
Right.
The leadership position is a greater responsibility. I don't try to lord it over anybody.
Right.
I do have to evaluate you because that's part of what I have to do. I mean,
Right.
I can't not do that.
Right.
But it was like they didn't know me. It was like, I was scratching my head at stuff. I mean, there was an incident where and when I say the entire, I would say 90% of the staff members
Mm-hmm.
gave me the silent treatment for at least 2 weeks. So can you imagine? And
No.
some of them continued it longer.
Wow.
Can you imagine
No.
almost the majority of the adults in the building you work with not talking to you?
No.
And I'm like, wait a minute. One, I was like, this is childish.
Right.
For them to give me the silent treatment, that's what the students do to us when they get mad.
Right.
Simply because Ohio rates the schools, they give them a report card grade.
Right.
Now we see the data and the scores prior to that grade being released. So, and that's something I covered my first day back with the teachers. Here's how we did, here's our trend, that kind of thing. So they knew how we performed in advance and it was good and we celebrated. But when the actual report card was released and I didn't do another celebration, they got mad and said I didn't appreciate their work and did not talk to me for 2 weeks.
So do you think the dynamic was too because of the power differential? You know, think about it. You were at an assistant level, which still is, you know, a step above them as educators, but still kind of pretty close. And perhaps their viewpoint was that you're on a almost an equal peer-to-peer level, relatability and otherwise, right? They know that you have some degree of power and they understand that, but it's not the degree of power as between them and the principal. So their perceptibility then when you transitioned up to principal was that you are on an entirely different power step, power differential. You're no longer their friend, you're no longer the buddy, the confidant, the person that they can come to and have that level of comfortable relationship with. Now you're somebody in more of an authority position. You are the ultimate, like you're it, you're that. And
Yeah.
beyond you, it's the superintendent of the school district. So you're the final stop. Whereas before, you know, there were still tiers. Do you think that some of that was, I'm just trying to get into the mind, I think, and the emotionality of that, right?
Yeah, I think that played a part. I believe that every new level that you go through as a leader, it's
Yeah.
almost like you have to reprove yourself once again,
Yes,
even
yes.
though it shouldn't be the case, because you, especially if you're with the same group, but
Right.
it's like they're trying to fill you out on this new level. And one thing I found in leadership is that one of the unfortunate things is sometimes people forget your kindness. So they only remember your most recent acts. They don't think about your track record.
Right.
And so I think me being the principal,
Yeah.
the head person, in the building played a role,
You were
because then
stepping all
it's
over again.
yeah, because then it's, even though I evaluated teachers as the assistant principal, but it's different. It's like this dude holds the key to,
Yes.
no matter how my evaluation turns out, this dude holds the key kind of situation.
Right.
So I get that, but for me, because I connecting with people, it's like we should be beyond that. Because
Right.
before I was a principal, I was Jamal. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? And I connected. And just because the title, I didn't even move offices. Just because they changed the title outside of my office
Right.
didn't change who I am as a person
Right.
or how I was going to treat anybody.
Right.
And so, but it was one of those things where it recognized that maybe the connection wasn't like I thought. It
Yeah.
was an artificial culture, like an iceberg. There
Yeah.
were pieces on the top,
Right.
but below it was a lot more that apparently I hadn't touched or scratched the surface. And
Yeah.
there were aspects that of their perspective that didn't come into play until I assumed the role.
Yes.
And so I think it was that, and I think the artificialness of the culture too was a part of it. Because me, I'm a connect.
Right.
I just am. And I don't like being fake.
Right.
I don't like pretending,
Right.
because that's not beneficial.
Right.
And so I like to address real stuff, and let's deal with the real stuff
Right.
so we can be better and move on. Because that's the essence of true relationship and true connectivity.
Agreed. And I think too, the dynamic then enters in where, you know, again, the perceptibility was that you were among them. And, you know, just like watching lobsters in a tank, right? Lobsters will try to climb out of the tank and another lobster climbs on that back and pulls that lobster down. So it's as we rise in promotability and relationship and power differential and dynamics, right? There will be those people who look at you differently, though you're not looking at them any differently. You're like, I'm still me. And they're like, no, you're not, because of the perceivability,
Yes.
right, of the level of power and position and ascribed prestige that they give to that role or whatever. And so, yeah, there is that dynamic too. I've worked in environments where it's kind of an unspoken, group think dynamic of you don't go above, or this is only as high as you can go before we recognize and realize that you're no longer one of us.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate.
And that's so true what you said.
Yeah.
And I would add to the perspective of, or I would say it this way, and I want to throw the word trauma around, but I would say the trauma of what someone in that other position had done has how that person is acted.
Sure.
So not the principal before me, because she was awesome. I mean, she was really good. But if someone had a bad experience with principals in the past, and it's almost like, and some of them admitted that not the principal before me, but principals they've had years prior in other schools and other school districts, painted their view of how principals are, which then lends itself to that you need to prove yourself to me now that you are in this role. To prove you are not like this other person who did me wrong. And so part of that was it too. So it was almost like a defense mechanism that kicked in. It was like, as soon as the paper under my, literally the paper is not even molded, it's a paper, they slide in the thing. As soon as the paper changed, it said principal, it was like a switch where this defense mechanism kicked in. And now it's like, I have to be on guard because somebody 5 years ago burned me and treated me bad. And so now I need to either be on the offense or the defense from this person now who's in this position, because he hasn't had the luxury of being in this position for 5 years to make me trust him. And
you were assistant principal, but again, you didn't hold their careers, their career life in your hands to that level at all. But now suddenly you're in this position of power where you could say, we no longer need you, and they'd be gone. Absolutely. So those assumptions, that run, the subconscious conditioning that you talked about earlier, like you said, of other events can come into play in those positions, and it can be very difficult, in how to achieve that. So if you could, we're almost close to our time. I think we might have to do another show. But how do you address that, or what would be a good piece of advice that you would give to people on addressing those subconscious kind of bits of baggage that we all bring into these situations in our lives?
Well, I would say for the person who's on the receiving end of it, my first advice would be to continue to never stop reaching out. Don't let someone's subconscious misbehavior change you. So you have to continue to keep reaching out. And then my second piece would be, and it goes kind of with the first one, don't let it change you and how you treat them, but also don't let it change you and how you view yourself. because those things could have the potential to make you question yourself and make you not show up fully or authentically as a leader. So you have to not allow it to change yourself while you're still continuing to reach out to them.
Right.
And then my third piece of advice is know where to draw the line and when. Because sometimes you just gotta be like, look, enough is enough. This is what I've done. And if it's not good enough for you, sorry for you. I mean, at a certain point, you gotta be that, because you can't get into the cycle of jumping through hoops to get people's trust. You know, I often say that there's a difference between doing things and earning people's trust and doing things to get people's trust. One is a result of natural action. The other is more performance based. And as a leader, if you focus your performance on, I need to do this so the people will like me, then your eye is off the ball. Versus I'm doing this because it's the right thing and it's a part of what we're doing to accomplish the goal. So I would say that. Now, to the person who's carrying the baggage, you know, they have to come to an awareness that they are operating from, you know, this word is out now a lot, a bias. They have a bias against this particular person in position because of a mistreatment that they've experienced previously. So they need to really reflect and have like a sense of self-awareness of, am I giving this person a fresh start, or are they starting from a place of having to apologize for something someone else has done, which is popular right now in the culture now. You know, folks think that one ethnic group needs to apologize for what their ancestors did, which I clearly have said, you know, on social media and in other formats, that's not the case. The people who did the wrong owe an apology, and there should be restitution and justice. But the people who did not, you can't hold them accountable. Now, if they promote the wrong, you know, through their words, actions, and beliefs, that's different.
Then they're culpable.
But so we have to recognize if a person has a bias, they have to recognize that they have to filter, am I making this person apologize or make up for something that happened to me wrong in the past that they had nothing to do with? And once that awareness comes to play, they have to really do the soul work to deal with the hurt and how they felt when they were treated wrongly, and really get that out of their soul so they can respond to this new person in this new position in a healthy way. And so,
my friend, I love that. And I'm serious. I really want to have you back on. And I would love for us to have this conversation. I'm writing it down right now about bias and the soul work approach of that, because it's a message that, and let's schedule this sooner than later, seriously, because that's an important message for all of us.
Absolutely.
It's important for leadership. It's important for us as human beings. It's important for our own, like you said, growth and development and maturation, and who we are and how we show up in the world, and our authenticity and level of genuine relatability. Because we're not going to get anywhere if we don't lay that down, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. You guys, I wanna let you know that I'm going to be adding the links to contact and connect with Jamal in the information about the episode and all of that. But you can find him on Facebook by his name, Jamal Maxsam. That's Maxsam. Twitter and Instagram, the same thing. His email is jamal@jamalmaxsam.org. And then he has a free offer. Do you want to talk a little bit about your free offer?
Yeah, so basically I have a free gift that I offer to people in leadership or people who want to learn leadership. And it's basically talks about one thing that's blocking their ability to influence. And I provide 3 strategies on how to overcome that block. And so they can click the link. It's a PDF and it's set up for, in true educator format, it's set up at the beginning where you can really look for certain points to draw from and use as points of discussion and really be a tool. So they can click the link and download that PDF and use it for themselves and use it with, anyone else that they want to help use it with.
I love it. The PDF is one thing that is blocking your influence and 3 strategies for leadership success. You can find that at www.freeleadershipgift.jamalmaxsam.org. And then you also offer a 3 30-minute champion strategy session. What is that?
Yes. So basically, for people who have questions about strategic leadership or leadership in general, I offer a free 30-minute session where I hear about their needs and go from there. And so I offer those free 30-minute sessions just to help people get clarity about any leadership issue they're facing or in general, any strategic move they want to make and need someone to help talk them through it that's not in the middle of the situation, someone who can have a perspective that's not attached to it. So I offer that, and there's a link for that where they can schedule their time with me.
Awesome. Jamal can be reached for that tongue twister, free 30-minute champion strategy session at www.strategysession.jamalmaxsam.org.
Yes.
I have really enjoyed our conversation. And
me too.
Again, you were holding out on me on the whole law enforcement thing, my friend.
Oh, man.
But, we'll get back together again and we'll talk about, I really want to dive into that and, the whole thing around bias and the soul work of all of this and, how each one of us can heal and deepen that, for ourselves and for others collectively too. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an honor to be on the show and to have the discussion.
Yeah. It was very important discussion. And I know that we're going to, this discussion and what you shared and how you show up and who you are, and the wisdom that you bring. And you guys, that's the overarching message that I received from Jamal today was about, everything that we do in life and how we are and what we bring to the table must be balanced and tempered with wisdom.
Yes.
So if you're looking for ways to tap into that and you want to know more about that, reach out to my friend Jamal Maxsam. Thank you again for joining me, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So much.
Yes.
I had a wonderful time with you.
Me too.